So there was another story here, a really sad story. This is Australian as well. So a user's exchange account was hacked. And so what happened is a few years ago, he invested around $45,000 into Bitcoin. It grew to around $100,000, and he had intended to retire early. So that was part of his retirement, not the full amount. But unfortunately, because he left that on the exchange and he didn't log back into the exchange for quite a while, just recently when he logged back in to withdraw that money out, he found that the money had already been withdrawn, unfortunately. And how it happened is actually not that uncommon. So his email address, which was linked to the exchange, was compromised. So a hacker got access to his email address. The hacker then requested a password reset from the exchange, which went to that email address. The hacker changed the exchange password, logged into the exchange, and then set up two-factor authentication to lock the original user out. And then the hacker withdrew the funds, which to the exchange would look very much just like the user using their wallet. Now, the thing that makes this relatively common is the fact that the user's data was leaked in a previous data breach that affected over 1 million users. And so both his email and password, which he'd maybe likely used for another service, and he doesn't change the email or the password very often, allowed the hacker to know what kind of credentials to use. And this user might not have been individually targeted. This could have been a hacker using all those credentials on as many exchanges as they can find until they eventually get to log into one. The other reason I say this isn't that uncommon is that Chainalysis has released a report that said in 2021, over $750 million US has been hacked from crypto in similar ways. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so I think you're probably thinking, oh, well, that probably won't affect me. I've got 2FA set up on my account. But the thing is, if anyone loses their phone, inside your phone, if someone can access that, it's your 2FA code, your email, and like a browser, probably with all your history or maybe your apps. So it's definitely not a good idea to store almost any amount of money on an exchange, but certainly large amounts. And that's why we've made our transaction fees much, much lower than the other competing exchanges. So just have a think about, well, what happens if you lose your phone? What could happen to your Bitcoin? And I think once you kind of go through that mindset, then you quickly realize maybe you need to use an old phone for the 2FA code, or better yet, just use cold storage.
Yeah, the other thing to know about 2FA, second factor on exchanges, it's only as useful as the policy of exchange. By that, what I mean is most exchanges, if you go to them and tell them you lost your second factor, they'll have some kind of process to allow you back into your account, which makes it good from a usability perspective, but that could potentially be a hacker contacting the exchange saying they lost the 2FA app, pretending to be somebody else. So it actually, it's worth knowing that. And it's worth knowing what the policy of exchange is in terms of lost second factor. And obviously it's not easy, like at Hardblock, obviously it's not easy to do. We do have a process where we call up the customer, we have like a waiting period, and we try to get a selfie just to make sure it is the real person. But it's something to be aware of. I think probably the main point of what I'm saying is, even if you have second factor installed on an exchange wallet, you probably get better security for reasons like that, hosting it on, having your Bitcoins on a hardware wallet or something, kind of similar cold storage. That's why exchange with second factor isn't a replacement for the security of a hardware wallet.
Absolutely. I've put a couple of rules here that I think some users could abide by and circumvent a lot of these risks, or at least mitigate them. So one is exactly that, Daniel. Don't keep your Bitcoin on an exchange or a third-party platform. Withdraw it to self-custody, preferably a hardware wallet, cold storage wallet. When in doubt, remember the phrase that you'll probably hear a lot in Bitcoin: not your keys, not your coin. If you're trusting your keys with someone else, they are the owner of your Bitcoin at that point. The other one would be having strong and unique passwords on both the exchange and the separate email account linked to the exchange. You could use something like Bitwarden or another free open source software to help with password management to make that process a little bit easier, because we're not suggesting that everyone try to remember very, very complex and unique passwords, but instead up their password game by employing something like a password manager where they can very easily use strong and unique passwords for everything. The other point is two-factor authentication, of course, but if you're right, Daniel, that does have some loopholes in it where it depends on the exchange's policies as well. But having two-factor authentication on both the email and the exchange accounts would have been a good additional level of security for this user. And again, there's a lot of apps that could do that, like Aegis Authenticator or Trilio Authy, or even just Google Authenticator. It helps. If the exchange allows for it as well, another thing that can be useful is enabling email notifications for any kind of drastic exchange activity, like perhaps money being sent in or money being sent out. That's not always possible, but if it is, it can be a useful way to be alerted if someone's logging into your account or transacting on your account, or at least attempting to. Another one which gets a little bit more complicated and a little bit more cumbersome is having a separate email address for your exchange accounts. So most people have what I would call like a daily driver in terms of their email. It's the one that they use for everything else. I would say anything that's very sensitive, like a Bitcoin exchange, have that on a separate email. That way, if anyone compromises your original email, they don't get access to your exchange-related email. If you follow at least a portion of those strategies, generally you would be protected against a hack like this, especially if you're using strong and unique passwords on every login that you use.